You've probably seen these images online and presumed that it was nothing more than a weird zoomer meme. But no, they are screenshots from a real game.
Gollum Sweep. First game to sell 1 Galillion copies. Game of the Gallennium.
It is, quite fairly, the worst reviewed game of 2023. That is insane to me. This is the same year that Forspoken was released. It's the same year that Redfall was released. How bad does a game have to be reviewed worse than those two? Gollum stands out for all the wrong reasons. The game's reception has been far from positive, with reviewers panning it as derivative, uninteresting, and fundamentally broken. Player engagement has been alarmingly low. On the day of recording this, there are currently 145 people playing Gollum on a Friday night, the day after launch. That is dreadful. It's important to question why Gollum has failed to captivate its audience and live up to the expectations set by the esteemed franchise it belongs to. I can't help but wonder why the developers chose to center the game around the character of Gollum, a decrepit and worn down hobbit who's essentially a crackhead, rather than opting for a more thrilling and iconic character like a ranger, a dwarf, or an elf. The concept of playing as Gollum, whose purpose revolves around his addiction to the ring, is baffling. I wanted to delve into this game a little, and we can hopefully figure out where it all went wrong, and why it's failed. The premise of Gollum revolves around the titular character on a quest to find Bilbo Baggins and retrieve the One Ring. Players take on the role of Gollum, embarking on a journey that spans several regions of Middle-earth. It was promised to us as a stealth game, which sounds like it has genuine potential. But despite the potential it had with its premise, the game falls short of expectations. The Guardian's review in particular, labelling the game as derivative, uninteresting and fundamentally broken. One of the primary issues identified by critics is a lack of originality and compelling storytelling. While the game features an original story, the narrative fails to capture that special, unique quality that Tolkien's works are known for. The gameplay mechanics being described as fundamentally broken is particularly damning. The game's execution of stealth, action and adventure fails to meet the standards of a game that holds a $70 price tag. For that price, which is ridiculous for any game for the record, but for that price we expect a fantastic game, and they had the luxury of it being set in a world that people were already invested in. The negative reception of Gollum can be attributed to several key factors. Firstly, the game's memed screenshots circulating online may have played a huge part in it. No one is looking at these screenshots and going, oh, I'll have to check that out. And then we have the low player count shortly after the game's launch. Even people who haven't seen these horrific images will be turned off if they see this number. It's indicative of its failure to capture the interest and engagement of the gaming community. Even the most die-hard Lord of the Ring fans wouldn't bother with it after seeing how few people are playing it. The game's strange premise doesn't help. Who cares about Gollum performing chores in prison while raising a pet bird, instead of a thrilling stealth action game that immerses players in epic battles and missions? The game instead presents a mundane and uninteresting scenario. I'm not a huge Tolkien fan. I read the first book, and I've seen the extended editions of the trilogy once, and I wasn't that fussed about it. They're well made, but not enough for me to invest the time in. I was always more of a Star Wars fan, but I acknowledge that they're well made, entertaining films. I really hope the estate stops handing out licenses for garbage adaptations like this, and Rings of Power. I don't care if we never get another Tolkien-based game or show ever again, if it means no more rubbish like this. The concept of creating a game where players assume the role of an underpowered character within the world's biggest intellectual property. It was inherently flawed from the beginning. It's like making a Star Wars game where players control an Ewok. Having said that, the Styx games were alright, and they didn't rely on any main characters. I suppose the difference there is that it felt like the studio behind them actually cared. Perhaps the strangest decision of all is the fact that Andy Serkis wasn't involved. How do you make a Gollum game without Andy Serkis? When I first heard of this, I presumed he would be involved. But no, they couldn't even get that right. His ability to bring nuance and an uncanny realism to Gollum's complex personality is what makes the character so memorable in the first place. Do you reckon they went to him? Or never even approached him? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe after appearing in both the trilogy and the first Hobbit movie, he was tired of playing the character. And he was kinda busy that year, what with LOTR and Andor. But surely it would mean only standing in a booth for a few days. That's money for old rope. There's no way they went to him and he turned it down, surely. Or maybe they simply couldn't afford him. I've got no idea. Whatever it was a ridiculous decision. It's also ridiculous how there is paid DLC to unlock accurate Elvish dialogue. It's perplexing that players are expected to pay an extra $10 to access basic lore elements that should be integral to the game's experience. It is a cynical attempt to extract more money from players, rather than a genuine commitment to delivering an authentic and immersive experience. I hate DLC content. I never buy it unless it's Hitman related, because that game recently released an entire new game mode entirely for free, and I've got hundreds of hours of playtime in that free game mode. So paying a tenner for some hideous weapons that I'll never use kind of balances it out for me. I'm buying them to support the studio, not because I need or want the DLC. But a tenner to unlock lore accurate dialogue. A tenner to unlock some weird emotes to make Gollum look even stranger. I think I speak on behalf of everyone here when I say, no thank you. Let's talk about Daedalic Entertainment, the studio behind Gollum, because it has an interesting history. They are primarily known for developing point-and-click adventure games, which apparently are quite good for what they are. It's even earned the studio the moniker of German LucasArts. Sure, perhaps those games are good, but what made them think that a 3D action-adventure game like Gollum was their game to make? This transition to a different genre requires a unique skill set and understanding of gameplay mechanics that they simply did not have. Once I learned about the studio behind this game, I suddenly understood why the gameplay mechanics felt clunky and unpolished. This disconnect between the studio's comfort zone and the demands of the game's genre is a huge part of the problem. They were not the right pick for this game. Why do games always get paired with the wrong studio? It's like when the GTA remaster was given to a studio who only made mobile games. Who makes these decisions? Gollum is a prime example of corporate greed overshadowing the importance of artistic integrity. Instead of focusing on creating a high quality and engaging game that does justice to the beloved source material, it seems that the primary objective here was to capitalize on the popularity of the IP. This profit-driven mindset can be detrimental to the creative process, resulting in rushed and poorly executed projects like this one. Corporate greed is ruining things time and time again. Look at the current writers' strike. Talented writers are being undervalued and exploited by corporations. People are left struggling with low wages and poor working conditions, while the companies prosper off their hard work. No wonder terrible stuff like this is made. This game could have been great, but instead, they went with a project that was safe and formulaic. And what did we end up with? Something fundamentally terrible. I'm fuming that this was allowed to go out. It looks like one of the free games that Netflix pushes you to play. Don't for 1 second think that this game was rushed to release for any other reason than because they only have less than 15 years left before Lord of the Rings is entirely public domain. That's why we're getting so many crap remakes and spin-offs of Tolkien's work. They were waiting on Christopher Tolkien to pass away because he was careful with what got made in the Lord of the Rings universe, because he cared. But the person in charge now clearly doesn't care about anything other than money. I feel like it's only fair to point out that COVID affected the production of the game. The pandemic forced studios to adapt to new work environments and remote collaboration, which obviously presented numerous obstacles and delays. Developers faced several difficulties adjusting to remote workflows, encountering technical difficulties, and obviously there were other issues that came with the worry about the world falling apart. These factors undoubtedly affected the development timeline of Gollum. Of course, this doesn't excuse how terrible the game is, but we've got to acknowledge how it would have affected it. All the games we're seeing come out now are likely to have been started in 2019, which is probably why so many of them are crap. It almost makes me feel bad for the developers, but like I said, there is no excuse for releasing a crap game with a $70 price tag. So yeah, there is no one single explanation for why this game failed. There are so many reasons, but ultimately, I think this was a failure from the second that they decided to make a Gollum game without the involvement of Andy Serkis. He is Gollum. It was an insane decision. Nobody asked for this game. Nobody wanted it. Expectations were on the floor, and yet it still managed to disappoint. It feels like a prank, it's that bad. Right, I'll let you go. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. We're trying to make it to 3K, so help us out. Alright, I'll let you go. Bye.